Hello, guys. This is not a political video, but unelected billionaires is a very interesting phenomenon that we are observing, especially in the last 10 odd years. Now, the influence of this or reach of these people was limited, so to say. They were not in the forefront always. But now, in the last 10 odd years, we can see that a lot of unelected billionaires are setting the global agenda, setting the national agendas, setting the state agendas, and setting the local agendas. So I remember Manish Tiwari, who was a Congress spokesperson during Manmohan Singh's time. He had used one interesting term, tyranny of the unelected and the unelectable. Tyranny of the unelected and unelectable. That means the tyranny of the people who are either unelected even after contesting or unelectable, those who cannot be contesting and those who cannot be selected. Especially this pointer has become very important. World Economic Forum, as you know, 2024 Global Risk Report, it states that crime waves are going to be one of the biggest issues in the next 10 odd years globally. Now, when I say crime waves can be are of different types. Crime waves, especially if you compare the global report of World Economic Forum, especially against 2023 and 2021, the three additional components have got added. For example, cyber-dependent crimes were not there in 2021 in the report. Now it is there. Then financial crimes is there. Then there is extortion and protection racketeering, trade in counterfeit good, illicit trade in excisable good. That means tax evasion. Important aspect to understand this is, though the crime wave is going to be very important in the next 10 odd years. Even in crime, if you look at the criminal actors, global criminal actors, compared to 2021 and 2023, worth mentioning addition, which is private sector actors, and they are going to play a very major role. The remaining criminal actors, criminal networks, mafia and mafia-style groups, state-embedded actors, and foreign actors. For us, for today's video, two parts are very important. First is the state-embedded actors, which have grown, and the second is a very new phenomenon, which is private sector actors that are going to play a very important role in global crimes. Why I am telling you this is the topic of this today's video is unelected billionaires, which essentially means the billionaires who are neither contesting the elections nor are getting elected, but they are exerting humongous pressure, influence on the governments or the governing bodies or the enterprises or the institutes that are working towards the welfare of the nation, of the state, of the globe in totality. So unelected billionaires basically have, especially with tech billionaires, they have unlimited money supply, they have unlimited money, they are billionaires basically, and then they are not answerable, they are not accountable to anybody. And that is exactly, and very important power centers are in their hands. They completely control those power centers. That is why we are going to discuss tyranny of the unelected billionaires. And let us understand pros and cons of both. Now, unelected billionaires, if they are on the right track, obviously, it can be a boon. It can be a very major force that can help us grow substantially as a human being, as a human race. And if at all unelected billionaires go in a different direction, wrong direction, then obviously it can be extremely difficult to sustain against those, because those are extremely powerful. They have access to power, they have access to money, they have access to resources, and then obviously they can create a lot of havoc across the globe. So let's understand first what are pros of unelected billionaires. First is access to vast resources. Owing to the money or the wealth that they accumulate or have, plus obviously while accumulating this wealth, they must be doing some work. It can be either legal or illegal, whatever. But they have access to vast resources that can be used. If they can be used in a positive direction, it is a boon. And if they are implemented in the wrong direction, then it can be extremely difficult situation for all of us. Then the second pro of unelected billionaires is they are innovation and risk. They have innovation and risk-taking abilities. That means unelected people become billionaires only after creating substantial amount of industry, udyog, so to say, or creating wealth, so to say. And while creating wealth, they whatever business or whatever the activities they are doing, which is resulting into a humongous amount of money. It can be either drug trafficking or industry or manufacturing or public welfare, or it can be anything, pharmaceutical, it can be anything. But innovation and risk-taking abilities are amazing. That is exactly why these people end up doing that or something that others cannot even think about. So, for example, Elon Musk is a billionaire. I'm not saying he's a unelected. Obviously, he's an unelected billionaire, but I'm not saying he's good or bad. But innovation and risk-taking ability is humongous. And his aspiration is to build a colony on Mars. And so, in order to reach that goal, obviously, he's innovating his SpaceX rockets that can be landing again. And there are so many other things that are going on. The third pro of unelected billionaires is because of the influence of the activities that they are doing. They create a humongous amount of jobs. Job creation is very important, and they create humongous amount of jobs for all of us. The fourth is promotion of innovation and startups. Since they are solving problems that are yet to be solved, obviously they will need innovative and creative and intelligent minds, and they will motivate and inspire people to come up and start working on those. And that is exactly how they end up innovating, as well as they end up mentoring and motivating startups that can help in their larger goal. Then there is development of key industries. For example, let me take this example again of Elon Musk. Since he's focused on creating a colony, occupy Mars, so to say, creating a colony on Mars. So whatever needs to be done in order to create a colony on Mars, he's working towards it tirelessly. And while doing so, he's developing new key industries which were never heard of. Boring company, which was boring the underground tunnels. Then there is Twitter. Then there is SpaceX. Then there are other activities related to human brain and machine interface. So all these aspects are being worked out, and that is how the new key industries are getting developed. Similarly, Jeff Bezos, who was the e-commerce globally, the kind of humongous work he has done in e-commerce is amazing. That is how the key industries are getting developed. The next is innovation technology, as we discussed, and encouragement of entrepreneurship while doing all this. Whatever support he gets from other people, intelligent people, creative people across the globe, he will welcome them with their teams, and he will use their resources, use their creativity, use their expertise, and use their time in order to reach that goal. Then while doing all this, he's also this unelected billionaires also end up boosting technology adoption. For example, in Indian context, if Jio is getting launched, they are launching Jio products, telecom products, and a huge amount of Indian population which had no access to internet or SIM cards or telecommunication or mobiles. Those mobiles and services were launched by Jio, and then the adoption has exponentially grown after that. So this similar aspect can be applied to Elon Musk's Starlink. So if there are certain pockets across the globe that are not covered under so-called internet, then this internet providing satellites can obviously cover large area, and people who are not connected to internet can get connected. So the technology adoption is becoming very important. This applies to driverless cars also. Similarly, so I'm just giving examples of Elon Musk, but then there are so many other things that because of which the technology adoption is increasing. These people, unelected billionaires, next point is have focus on long-term objectives. Occupy Mars is very long-term, obviously. So since they have long-term objectives, they end up building humongous networks, humongous industries, humongous projects, humongous businesses. That is exactly how we get benefited from those. Then they have a speed and flexibility because of the access to resources, access to people, access to money, and access to power. They end up executing these projects at a very fast rate, and they are flexible enough in decision making to make comments, to make changes or adjustments whenever they are required, which ultimately ends up in execution of the projects before time. And then there is a financial support for development projects. Since they have access to resources, access to money, access to people, the development projects that can be country, federal, or national, these unelected billionaires can help support financially these projects. We have seen so many Tatas, for example, they are supporting so many development projects across India that are not exactly a business type of project, but still Tata Cancer Hospital, for example. So these amazing initiatives can be undertaken by unelected billionaires. Then there is global collaboration. Obviously, once a person grows, a person becomes a billionaire, he has vast resources, vast contacts, and vast networks. That is exactly how we can get help of their counterparts. They are connected. Globe is a small village now, so these billionaires are obviously connected across the globe. And if at all there is a need of technology or information or access or resources, they can always talk to their billionaire friends and get it done as soon as possible. So this global collaboration is possible. Then there is global influence beyond national borders. It is the exact same thing. For example, Elon Musk can always launch Starlink in India. Even Aditya Birla is working in Africa, Birla Carbon and all those industries, cement and textile, etc., etc. So these global influences beyond national borders are also helping international recognition of Indian businesses. This is unelected billionaires, for example, Tata, while they bought Jaguar, Land Rover, and Fidelity, etc. All these big brands, when they were bought, Chorus, for example, the steel plant. So when these plants were bought, obviously there was a lot of discussion across the globe about Indian billionaire buying global brands. So this is how we get international recognition because of billionaire businessmen. Then there is a financial power for global challenges. Obviously, while we are working on federal growth and restructuring and progress, there can be certain areas wherein the global entities, the global bodies like NATO or G7 or UN, they will need our assistance, they will need our help, and obviously these unelected billionaires can help with their resources in meeting those expectations globally also. Improved public infrastructure is next. While these billionaires, unelected billionaires, develop their businesses, develop industries, develop their work mechanisms in our country. While doing so, they obviously help us enhance or improve our public infrastructure. In some cases, we have seen that they actually are developing these public infrastructures like Metro Rail, for example, in Mumbai. It was developed by Anil Ambani's Reliance Infrastructure. So these kind of collaborations are possible. Then there is support for rural development, especially with basic necessities like water, electricity, roads. So a lot of billionaires are working on in these areas also positively. Then there is disaster relief contributions. Like we are seeing in Corona pandemic, a lot of unelected billionaires are helped a lot of people across the globe with vaccines and oxygen supply, oxygen tanks, etc., medicines and medicinal guidance. So these are amazing things that have happened because of unelected billionaires, which otherwise a government on their own could not have been possible for them to support these many people. Then there is advancing clean renewable energy. We have seen a lot of activities, a lot of work going in these directions, where a lot of billionaires, a lot of moneyed people, so to say, they are interested in building vast solar parks and renewable energy systems and projects, because of which we are also getting benefited. Though carbon rating or carbon neutral norms of the organizations are also working in this direction, but billionaires are helping us reach there by advancing clean and renewable energy initiatives. Then rapid emergency response. We have seen a lot of billionaires allowing their public infrastructure, transport infrastructure or facilities being used by federal governments or state governments in the case of emergencies. Then there's philanthropy focused on underfunded issues for social welfare. The best example in this case can be Tata's, who are Tatas of Shivnadar from HCL or for Ajit Premji from Wipro. They are doing fantastic work in for Naran Murthy, Sudhan Murthy for that matter. They are doing amazing work in terms of philanthropy, where a lot of trusts or a lot of undeveloped or underfunded projects are getting huge boost because of the support from unelected billionaires. So these were some of the aspects that are pros. So these are some of the aspects that are pros of unelected billionaires, while there are obviously the other side, negative side also. As long as unelected billionaires have a mentality of supporting nation, supporting society, and working towards the greater good of the infrastructure or the society or the nation, then everything is good. But if you see that some of the unelected billionaires are going in wrong direction, then obviously it is a very major issue, very big issue for all of us. So some of the cons of unelected billionaires are lack of accountability. They have a lot of resources, they have a lot of funds, they have a lot of people, they have a lot of access to power, but they are not accountable. We cannot question them about their performance, about their objectives, about their ways of getting things done, etc. etc. Basically, there's absolute lack of accountability, and nobody can question them. Then there is concentration of power and monopoly in the industries. Concentration of power is the single person, the unelected billionaire is the individual who will make decisions on all of us, or a lot of people will be getting affected because of decisions. If the decisions are correct, obviously it is fantastic. If these decisions are wrong, then obviously a lot of people will end up paying price for the same. And because of the unlimited access to funds and resources and power, these unelected billionaires end up creating monopolies on their businesses. So the profit builds on profit, and then that is how the money starts growing exponentially. So this is a negative aspect. Then there is a private interest versus public good. Not all the unelected billionaires will be aiming at public welfare, or they will be obviously focused on individual benefits or individual growth first. Then in some cases, while in the pursuit of all those personal gains and objectives, some of the social or the national or the federal aspects can get damaged. It can be a society, it can be infrastructure, it can be nature, etc., etc. So these shortcuts, so to say, this can be against public interest, and though it can be beneficial to these unelected billionaires, but in a long-term view, in a larger context, this can be very bad for society, bad for country, bad for federal infrastructure. So this private interest versus public good is important aspect. Then there is inequality. For example, the people who are supporting these unelected billionaires will end up getting a lot of access to power, resources, money, whereas the people who are not connected to these individuals or billionaires will end up losing all those privileges of money and access to infrastructure, access to good life, etc., etc. The difference between the haves and the have-nots will go on increasing exponentially, and this will end up basically in creating inequality, not only from money perspective, but also from social status, to access to public infrastructure, etc., everything. So there is potential for disruption. For example, an elected billionaire, if unchecked, he can create a lot of havoc, as we have seen in some of the movies. Like, I'm taking example of movies because it is very easy to analyze or understand analogy. For example, Iron Man, he a lot of access to power, access to infrastructure, access to technology, can ultimately end up in wrong hands, and then it can be very difficult to safeguard ourselves from those negative repercussions. Similarly, in Batman, unelected billionaires having access to a lot of resources, a lot of funds, a lot of power, a lot of technology, and obviously he's working on the positive side. But if the Batman goes rogue, then obviously we can see the cons of unelected billionaires. Similarly, we can think about Soros, we can think about Elon Musk, we can think about Ambani brothers, we can think about Tatas, we can think about so many other billionaires, unelected billionaires that are roaming around us. If at all they are on the negative side, obviously it can be very difficult to safeguard ourselves from the disruptions that they can cause. These disruptions can be not only social, financial, political, but also it can be natural calamities, etc., etc. Because of the imbalance that they create in social balance, delicate balance of social ecosystem, natural ecosystems. Then there is undermining of public institutions. Public institutions. As the unelected billionaires grow ambitious more and more, and since they have access to power, they can influence, they can corrupt the politicians, they can corrupt the judicial systems, they can corrupt the decision-making body of the federal governments, and obviously they can manage those rules, we always know that certain individuals used to think that if you can change the rule, why break them? If you can change the rules by using access to power, access to money, access to resources, why not change the rules instead of bending the rules or breaking the rules? So this kind of thought process comes into picture when the public institutes or the federal institutes get started undermined by these unelected billionaires. It is a major issue. Then there is potential for propaganda and influence. Since they have access to power, again, they can state the narrative, they can create a lot of fake narrative, they can misinformation, since they have access to media, they have access to money, they have access to influencers, they have access to influential people, they have access to judiciary, they have access to law, they have access to federal system. They can create the narrative, they can create a image, they can create a brand, they can create a perception, then they can break the perception, they can break the brand, they can break the image. so to say. It is all about creating propaganda and influencers. So this is basically extremely bad if at all an unelected billionaire start working in the wrong direction. Then obviously influence the policy in a similar manner. The policy of the federal structure, federal government can also be influenced to change the rules instead of breaking them to suit our agendas and objectives. We have seen a lot of activities in this regard in the last 5, say 10 years globally, which is very evident from the fact that Elon Musk was part of the telephonic call between Zelensky and Trump, the 47th President-elect Trump and Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. So, an elected billionaire, Elon Musk, being part of this communication itself is an example of influence of policy, potential for propaganda and influence, etc., etc. So, neglect of core social issues. If the core social issues are not matching with the agendas or the objectives of the unelected billionaires, obviously they will be sidelined, they will be ignored, they can be undermined, and they can be altogether made ineffective to suit the objectives and agendas of unelected billionaires. This is a very important consequence of an unelected billionaire. Then there is so urban-rural divide because of the access to power, access to infrastructure, etc. The people who have access to this largest shared by unelected billionaire obviously will be getting advantage, but the people who are not we do not have people who don't have access to all these amenities, infrastructure, resources. Obviously, they will feel betrayed, they will feel sidelined, they will feel insulted. So in some cases, and this will create urban-rural divide, rich and poor divide, and that will be very wrong for a federal infrastructure. Then potential for media control. We have seen a lot of people, for example, Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News, that is setting narrative in America. We have seen a lot of Indian conglomerates buying national channels, TV channels, etc., and setting influencers to, so to say, now, and setting up these fake narratives and media control. Then there is private interest over public good. We have discussed. Then there is disruption without regulation. Some unelected billionaires, owing to their access to global powers or the federal powers, they can break the rules. They can go scot-free after breaking the rules, and that can be very difficult for society or nation to sustain and survive. We have seen a lot of billionaires, we have seen a lot of wealthy people running from the country after siphoning off a lot of money. So this is a very difficult situation, disruption without regulation, that because they are not regulated, they have access to power and they can go scot-free. Nobody can find them, nobody can arrest them, nobody can convict them, and nobody can penalize them. This is the problem. Then there is overreach in public policy. The policy making itself can be influenced or undermined by these unelected billionaires by using access to power, and this can be utilized. This unlimited power, unlimited access, unlimited funds can be used to influence policies in the wrong way, so to suit our own requirements. It can be cloud policy, it can be telecom policy, it can be natural gas policy, it can be any other coal mining policy, it can be infrastructure policy, it can be any other policy. So this is a very valid and very difficult issue, especially when the unelected billionaires start going in the wrong direction with the hands on glove with the politicians. Then there is tax avoiding practices. Since we have seen a lot of times, Donald Trump has been asked to reveal his tax declarations, but he has not yet done. So he has not published it as of now, I believe. So these tax avoidance policies are so implemented with the tacit support from government bodies and politicians and the decision makers and the federal government. So these are some of the consequences of unelected billionaires getting access to power and the federal infrastructure. Then there are obviously just like tax avoidance practices. Then there are land acquisition practices. Then there are environmental concerns. For example, a lot of problems are getting created in Australia against Adani's mining. A lot of problems are getting created in South Africa, wherein a lot of billionaires, not only Adani but others, are also trying to get access to those natural resources. So these aspects are some of the very important consequences of unelected billionaires going in the wrong direction. Then obviously there is bias in philanthropy. So a lot of money so these unelected billionaires obviously can spend a lot of money on philanthropy in causes that they believe are very close to their hearts. In some cases, there can be biases related to religion, region, caste, affinity, objectives, some lobbies, etc. So there can be biases in spending this philanthropic work funds, as well as spending or allocating these resources to specific groups or specific sections of the society, because of which there can be a lot of distrust, mistrust, misinformation, and a lot of divide that gets created in a society. So these were some of the pros and cons of unelected billionaires. As we know, we cannot stop unelected billionaires, but it is very important to make sure that unelected billionaires stay within the stipulated regulations and areas where their influence power can be controlled in such a manner that they don't end up creating a problem for the federal infrastructure, federal systems, federal decision making, policy making, and society as a whole. We need unelected billionaires. Obviously, we need them, but we need to focus on the pros. We need to focus on how they can be beneficial to a globe in a larger context, and to state or the country in our own personal, private, selfish interest. At the same time, controlling the negative consequences or negative characteristics or negative inclinations, so to say. I think unelected billionaires are here to stay. The only matter is how do we manage them? How do we make sure that the agenda, how do we control them from the policy or from the negative tactics perspective, and how they can be controlled in the federal infrastructure, federal policy making, and that is going to play a major important role, because if unelected billionaires start dictating terms to government and federal infrastructures and federal decision making, obviously then the situation is going to be very, very wrong. Thank you very much, and I hope unelected billionaires will also end up only contributing to the positive aspect of the human evolution and development. Thank you very much.